My name is David Chen, and at 38 years old, I thought I had my life figured out. I was a successful corporate attorney at one of Seattle's most prestigious law firms, making partner just 2 years ago. My wife, Jessica, was a talented interior designer who had built her own boutique firm from the ground up. We lived in a beautiful home overlooking Lake Washington, drove luxury cars, and enjoyed the kind of lifestyle that most people only dream about. We had been married for 11 years, together for 14, and I believed we were happy. Our relationship began during my final year of law school when Jessica was working as a design consultant for a furniture company. She walked into the coffee shop where I was studying, wearing a flowing dress that somehow managed to be both professional and artistic. Her laugh was infectious, her energy magnetic. Within 3 months, we were inseparable. Within a year, I had proposed on a hiking trail overlooking Mount Rainier. The city spread below us like a promise of the future we would build together. The early years of our marriage were filled with the usual struggles. My grueling hours at the law firm, her late nights meeting with clients and overseeing installations, the careful balancing act of two ambitious careers. But we made it work. We supported each other's dreams, celebrated each other's successes, and built what I thought was an unshakable foundation of trust and mutual respect. We talked about having children eventually, but both agreed to wait until our careers were more established. In retrospect, that decision may have created a distance neither of us acknowledged. Without children to anchor us to a shared future, we became two satellites orbiting in the same space, but gradually drifting further apart. The first crack in my perception appeared on a Thursday afternoon in late September. I had left the office early, a rare occurrence prompted by a migraine that made it impossible to focus on the contract negotiations I was supposed to be preparing for. When I arrived home around 3 in the afternoon, Jessica's car was in the driveway alongside a silver BMW I didn't recognize. I found her in the living room with a man I had never met. They were standing close together, looking at fabric samples spread across our coffee table, their heads bent in concentration. The scene was innocuous enough, clearly a client consultation, but something about their body language gave me pause. The way he touched her elbow when making a point, the way she laughed at something he said with a warmth that seemed excessive for a professional interaction. Jessica startled when she noticed me. "David, what are you doing home so early?" Her tone carried surprise, but also something else, perhaps annoyance at the interruption. "Migraine," I explained, studying the man beside her. He was probably in his mid-40s, well-dressed in expensive casual wear with the kind of confident bearing that suggested wealth and success. "Oh, I'm so sorry, honey," Jessica said, her expression shifting to concern. "This is Marcus Sutherland. He hired me to redesign his downtown penthouse. Marcus, this is my husband, David." Marcus extended his hand with an easy smile. "Good to meet you, man. Your wife is incredibly talented. She's transforming my place into something amazing." I shook his hand, noting the firm grip and the expensive watch on his wrist. "That's what she does best." "I should probably head out anyway," Marcus said, gathering his leather portfolio. "We can finalize the bedroom plans next week, Jess." The casual use of Jess bothered me more than I cared to admit. Jessica had always preferred her full name, finding the nickname too informal, yet she didn't correct him. After Marcus left, I mentioned my observation to Jessica as casually as I could manage. "He seems friendly. How long have you been working with him?" "About 6 weeks," she replied, gathering the fabric samples. "He's been wonderful to work with. Very decisive. Trusts my vision completely. It's refreshing after some of the clients who want to micromanage every decision." "He called you Jess." She glanced up, a slight frown crossing her features. "So, it's not a big deal, David. You're making something out of nothing." Perhaps I was. I let the matter drop, attributing my discomfort to the migraine and general exhaustion. But over the following weeks, I noticed other small things. Jessica started dressing more carefully on days when she had meetings with Marcus. She mentioned him frequently in casual conversation, sharing anecdotes about his business success, his interesting travel stories, his sophisticated taste in art and wine. Her phone seemed to demand her attention more often, and she would sometimes smile at messages in a way that suggested intimacy rather than professional communication. I tried to dismiss my growing suspicions as paranoia, the product of long work hours and stress. Jessica had never given me reason to doubt her faithfulness. She had always been transparent about her schedule, generous with affection, engaged in our relationship. Yet something had shifted, a subtle recalibration in the way she existed in our shared space. The breaking point came on a Friday evening in early November. Jessica had mentioned she would be working late on Marcus's project, overseeing the installation of custom furniture pieces that had finally arrived. She expected to be home around 10. I had planned to use the evening to catch up on case files, maybe order takeout and watch a documentary. Around 8:30, my phone rang. It was Tom Bradley, a college friend who worked in commercial real estate. Hey man, random question. Wasn't sure if I should mention this, but I just saw Jessica at Altura with some guy. Looked pretty cozy. Everything okay with you two? My stomach dropped. Altura was Seattle's most exclusive restaurant, the kind of place where reservations required weeks of advanced planning and where the tasting menu cost more than most people spent on groceries in a month. It was definitely not the setting for overseeing furniture installation. What do you mean by cozy? I asked, keeping my voice level despite the ice spreading through my chest. Tom hesitated. They were at a corner table, pretty intimate setting, holding hands across the table at one point. Maybe it's innocent, client dinner or something, but it seemed more personal than professional. Thought you should know. I thanked Tom and ended the call, my mind racing. Every instinct screamed that I should go to the restaurant, confront whatever was happening. But another part of me, the lawyer trained in evidence and rational thinking, counseled patience. Jumping to conclusions based on secondhand information could damage something that might have an innocent explanation. I decided on a middle path. I would drive to Altura, observe the situation myself, and make decisions based on what I actually witnessed rather than speculation. The restaurant was in downtown Seattle, a 20-minute drive from our home. I parked down the street and walked to the entrance, my heart pounding in a way that felt both painful and surreal. Through the restaurant's large windows, I could see the elegant interior, the soft lighting, the well-dressed patrons enjoying their meals in the kind of relaxed luxury that only substantial wealth affords. I spotted Jessica almost immediately. She was seated at a corner table, just as Tom had described, facing Marcus Sutherland. But what struck me wasn't just their presence together. It was the intimacy of their interaction. The way Jessica leaned forward when she spoke, her hand occasionally reaching across the table to touch Marcus's arm. The way he looked at her with undisguised desire. The way they existed in their own bubble, oblivious to the restaurant around them. As I watched, frozen in place on the sidewalk, Marcus lifted Jessica's hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. A gesture so intimate and possessive that it left no room for misinterpretation. Jessica's response, a soft smile, and what looked like a whispered comment that made Marcus laugh, confirmed what I had been trying to deny. This was not a business dinner. This was an affair. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, watching my marriage dissolve through a restaurant window. Part of me wanted to storm inside, to confront them publicly, to make a scene that would shatter their comfortable little fantasy. But the lawyer in me, the rational part that had been trained to think strategically even in crisis, recognized that emotional reactions rarely produced optimal outcomes. Instead, I pulled out my phone and took several photos through the window. Evidence. Then I walked back to my car and drove home, my hands steady on the wheel even as my entire world tilted on its axis. When Jessica arrived home just after 11, I was sitting in the living room with a glass of scotch, the lights dim. She walked in with a bright smile, carrying her designer purse and a portfolio case. "Sorry I'm so late," she said, setting down her things. The installation took longer than expected, and then I had to address some issues with the lighting design. I'm exhausted. I took a slow sip of my scotch, studying her. She looked beautiful, her makeup still perfect, her dress the elegant black number she had worn on our last anniversary. "How was dinner at Altura?" The color drained from her face. For a long moment, she stood frozen, her expression cycling through surprise, fear, and finally something that looked like resignation. "David, I can't explain." "I'm sure you can," I replied, my voice remarkably calm. I'm very interested to hear how you explain having an intimate dinner with Marcus Sutherland while telling me you were overseeing furniture installation. Jessica sank onto the couch, her hands trembling slightly. It's not what you think. Really? Because what I think is that I just watched through the restaurant window as your client kissed your hand while you looked at him like he was the most fascinating person you had ever met. So please tell me what it actually is, if not what it appears to be. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. Those tears were for herself, for being caught, not for the pain she was causing me. Marcus and I have become close, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. It started as just a professional relationship, but over the weeks, we developed feelings for each other. We've been spending time together, getting to know each other outside of work. Spending time together, I repeated, the phrase so inadequate for what I had witnessed. Are you sleeping with him? She looked away, which was answer enough. When she finally spoke, her voice was defensive. You're never home, David. You work 80-hour weeks. You're always stressed about cases. You barely notice me anymore. Marcus pays attention to me. He listens when I talk about my work. He's interested in my ideas, my dreams. The justification, the attempt to make me complicit in her betrayal, ignited something cold and hard in my chest. So, this is my fault? Because I work hard to provide the lifestyle you enjoy? Because I'm committed to my career that gives you license to have an affair? I'm not trying to blame you, she said quickly, though that was exactly what she was doing. I'm just trying to explain how it happened. I didn't plan for this, David. It just developed naturally. Affairs don't just develop naturally, I countered. They develop through a series of conscious choices. You chose to spend time with him outside of professional necessity. You chose to accept his attention. You chose to have dinner with him while lying to me about where you were. Every step of this required deliberate decisions. Jessica's tears fell freely now. What happens now? I finished my scotch and stood. Now you pack a bag and stay somewhere else tonight. Tomorrow you can come back and collect more of your things while I'm at work. I need time to think about what comes next, but I can't do that with you in this house. David, please, she began, reaching for my hand. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. You don't get to ask me for anything right now, Jessica. You destroyed our marriage, and you did it while lying to my face. So pack your things and leave. She left within the hour, her suitcase hastily packed, her face blotchy from crying. I watched her car pull out of the driveway and felt nothing but a vast emptiness where my life had been just hours before. The next morning, I called Richard Winters, a divorce attorney my firm had worked with on several cases. I need to hire you, I told him. My wife is having an affair, and I want to end the marriage as cleanly and quickly as possible. Richard was professional and efficient. Washington is a no-fault divorce state, so the affair itself won't impact the legal proceedings significantly, but it might influence negotiations regarding asset division and spousal support, especially if you can demonstrate that she was using marital assets to conduct the affair. Over the following days, I gathered evidence, credit card statements showing expensive dinners and hotel charges on days when Jessica claimed to be working late, text messages I retrieved from our shared cloud account, messages that left no doubt about the physical nature of her relationship with Marcus, photos from social media showing them together at various events, always described as business functions, but with body language that suggested otherwise. Jessica attempted to initiate conversations about reconciliation, sending me long emails explaining her confusion, her unhappiness in our marriage, her genuine feelings for Marcus, but also her recognition that she had made terrible mistakes. I read them once, saved them to my evidence folder, and never responded. The divorce proceedings moved forward with the grim efficiency that comes when one party is determined to end things and has the resources to do so effectively. Jessica initially tried to fight for half of everything, including my partnership stake in the law firm and retirement accounts that were largely funded by my income. Her attorney argued that she had sacrificed her career potential to support mine, a claim that was demonstrably false given that she had built her own successful business. The turning point came when Richard presented evidence of Jessica's affair during mediation. along with documentation showing that she had used our joint credit cards to pay for hotel rooms and expensive gifts for Marcus. Her attorney's expression shifted from confident to concerned as the evidence accumulated. Your client committed adultery and used marital assets to support that affair, Richard stated calmly. While Washington doesn't penalize adultery in divorce proceedings per se, judges do consider the misuse of marital property. My client is prepared to be generous but not exploited. He's offering a fair division of assets acquired during the marriage, but he will not subsidize his wife's affair or reward her betrayal. Jessica's attorney requested a private consultation with his client. When they returned 20 minutes later, Jessica looked defeated. She agreed to a settlement that gave her the design business, her personal possessions, and a lump sum payment equivalent to about 30% of our liquid assets. I kept the house, my retirement accounts, and the majority of our investments. The divorce was finalized 4 months after that night at Altura. On the day the papers were signed, Jessica sent me a final email. I hope someday you can forgive me, not for my sake, but for yours. Holding on to anger will only hurt you. I genuinely loved you, David. I just lost my way, and by the time I realized what I was destroying, it was too late. I never responded to that email either. 6 months after the divorce, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Jessica's relationship with Marcus had ended badly. Apparently, once the thrill of the affair faded and they attempted to build an actual relationship, the reality proved less exciting than the fantasy. Marcus, it turned out, had a pattern of pursuing married women and losing interest once they became available. Jessica found herself alone, her reputation in Seattle's design community damaged by the gossip about her affair, several major clients having terminated their contracts when word spread about her personal conduct. I felt no satisfaction in this news, but I also felt no sympathy. Jessica had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into work, took on high-profile cases that expanded my professional reputation. I traveled, visiting places Jessica and I had talked about but never prioritized. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage, rediscovered hobbies I had abandoned. A year after the divorce, I met Elena Rodriguez at a legal conference in San Francisco. She was a corporate attorney from Los Angeles, sharp and confident with a wry sense of humor that made me laugh more than I had in years. We began as professional colleagues, our relationship developing slowly through phone calls and occasional meetings when our work overlapped. There was no rush, no pressure, just a gradual recognition that we enjoyed each other's company and shared similar values about honesty, integrity, and the importance of mutual respect in relationships. 2 years after my divorce from Jessica, Alina and I got engaged. The proposal was simple, intimate, nothing like the elaborate production I had staged for Jessica on that mountain trail so many years ago. We were walking along the beach in Malibu when I simply asked her if she would marry me, and she said yes with tears in her eyes and a smile that promised authenticity rather than performance. When I think back on my marriage to Jessica now, I see it clearly for what it was, a relationship built on attraction and shared ambitions, but lacking the fundamental honesty and loyalty required for lasting partnership. Jessica wanted the status and lifestyle of marriage without the discipline of commitment. She wanted to be adored without earning that adoration through consistent faithfulness. The night I discovered her affair at Altura was not the end of my happiness, but the beginning of my freedom. Freedom from wondering why I felt disconnected from my own wife. Freedom from the subtle manipulations and the creeping sense that something was wrong, even when I couldn't identify what. Freedom to build a future with someone who valued the same things I did, and who demonstrated that value through actions rather than words. I learned that trust, once broken, cannot be repaired simply by wanting it to be so. I learned that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. I learned that choosing self-respect over the appearance of marital harmony is not selfishness, but survival. Most importantly, I learned that the life you think you have is sometimes just a comfortable illusion, and discovering the truth, however painful, is always better than living a lie. Jessica eventually left Seattle, moving to Portland, where her reputation hadn't preceded her. She started fresh with a new design firm, new clients, a new life built from the ashes of the one she destroyed. I heard she eventually remarried to a software engineer who apparently had no knowledge of her past. I hope she learned from her mistakes, though I have no way of knowing if she did. As for me, I married Elena in a small ceremony overlooking the Pacific Ocean, surrounded by people who had supported me through the darkest period of my life. I stood beside a woman who had demonstrated her integrity through consistent actions, who valued honesty above comfort, who understood that love without trust is just attractive packaging around an empty promise. The betrayal that shattered my first marriage ultimately led me to a stronger, more authentic partnership. But the path between those 2 points was marked by pain, disillusionment, and the complete restructuring of my understanding about what marriage should be. If I could go back and prevent Jessica's affair, I wouldn't, because doing so would mean never discovering that I deserved better, never meeting Elena, never learning that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is the destruction of something you thought you needed. That night at Altura, watching through the window as my wife betrayed everything we had built, I thought my life was ending. I was wrong. It was just beginning.